Welcome back to the latest edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture and entertainment news website. I am thrilled to welcome the guest on my right. He was one of my favorite acts from season 15. He is a mentalist, a mind reader. He made it all the way to the semifinals. In all honesty, he should have been in the finals.
Hey.
Yes, over 96,000 Facebook fans and 191,000 Instagram followers. Please help me welcome Max Major.
Hey, thank you. And I'm honored that I was one of your favorite acts. You know, we had a good run this year.
You did. A lot of my favorite acts made it to the semifinals and the finals. So I do it I've been doing it since season 13, revealing my favorite acts for Jake's Take. And almost all of them have made it to the semifinals.
Did you predict the winner, though, is the question?
I did not have Brandon Leaks on my winner list.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah, it's very interesting. And I just finished doing a solo interview with him a week last Thursday. So you guys can check it out on Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast on Spotify. But however, we're not talking about Brandon this time. We're here to talk about you, my friend.
All right.
All right. So when did you get interested in magic and mentalism, and how did that passion evolve into desire of pursuing a career in the entertainment industry?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was always putting on kind of shows for my friends and family. I was doing impressions, different things. I guess I was that kid that was sort of always an entertainer at heart. But at the same time, I noticed that I kind of saw the world differently. And I started to realize that was a talent that I had. I learned about hypnosis when I was 18. I had a background in magic as well. And I just really started to marry all of those passions that I had. And that's really what mentalism is. It's like a combination of body language and psychology and influence and hypnosis. And you marry that with the showmanship of magic. And that's what mentalism is. Probably the biggest turning point along that path was when I was 18 years old. My dad went to see a hypnotherapist so he could quit smoking. And he didn't tell us he was going to do this. He was trying everything to quit and nothing was working. And one day he went and saw this hypnotherapist and he came home and he never smoked again. And I was fascinated by this. I felt like this was some sort of like real life superpower that he had encountered. And I started digging and I realized that the tools of influence of hypnosis could be really useful as a mentalist as well. So it started, I guess, as really humble beginnings. I was 13, 14 years old, putting on shows for my neighbors, kids' birthday parties, whatever it was. And now, over 20 years later, I've done thousands of live shows. And this year had the honor of performing on America's Got Talent. And it's really been a progression about sort of like learning more about human nature, experimenting on stage and on TV, and ultimately just kind of following my passion, because this is the only thing I've ever wanted to do my entire life.
And I'm so happy that you're following your passion and you did it wonderfully on the AGT. But before we talk about AGT, I was doing my research and I saw that you entertained audiences at major corporate events for Costco, Facebook, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft. So what goes through your mind when you prepare for these high-level company events, corporate events?
Yeah, that's really where I've kind of both earned my living and gained my experience over the last 20 years, has been performing at corporate events, conferences. And it really was only in the last couple of years that I started shifting towards a more public career. Hence the opportunity with AGT made a lot of sense to me. But as I prepare for a corporate event, it's very different from something like AGT, because you're entertaining people at an event that are there for some other purpose. So they're there at a conference to learn something about leadership. And so what I would do in those settings is I would try to translate my skill set, what I do as a mentalist, to what they could do in the real world. So I would often talk about topics like how to read people, how to be more influential, and how to use that in sales or in meetings or in leadership, or really at home in your life, because these are tools that anyone can use. Really, we're talking about communication. So it's something anyone can apply to their life. And so generally the way the preparation went was I would talk to the executives at the company, find out what their goals are, and then I would try to figure out a way to adapt my skill set to their goals, while at the same time trying to make it really entertaining along the way. Because at the end of the day, I'm an entertainer at heart.
Awesome. Now you have a fan base called Major Nation.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
How does I love that trick. Can you show me that again?
Now that's the spade. That's our spade right there for Major Nation. It's on the
Am I
couch
doing this
behind
right?
me as well. Yeah, that's it. Just like that.
Hey, thank you.
You
Yes,
got
I'm
it.
part. I wanted to be part of your Major Nation fan base, so
You
I
are.
think I'm now inducted.
You are officially. Yeah. I've been
All
so
right.
lucky to build a really wonderful community online that I lovingly refer to as Major Nation. You mentioned Instagram and Facebook. Another huge platform for me has been TikTok. Over the last 6 months, my TikTok has just exploded to over 1.1 million followers, which is absolutely insane. So I'm so lucky to have this super supportive, engaged, curious, passionate, loving fan base from all over the world. And it was really cool to see them show up and support during my AGT run, to vote, to share, to comment. It's really great to see all of that support.
I'm so happy they showed up for you. And now we got to talk about something. What about what are some of the challenges that you faced throughout your career, and how did you overcome those obstacles?
Well, as an entertainer, you're self-employed, so you have all of the same challenges that anyone has when starting a new business or a new career. And those are getting the word out about what you do, getting enough business so that you could do that and nothing else. I talked in AGT about how I was a bartender during and after college. It's just a way to kind of pay bills and make ends meet. So a lot of the early challenges were around sort of getting my business to a level at which I could support myself with my art and nothing else. And I was very lucky to be able to just dive kind of headfirst into that after college. And really, it's the only real job I ever had besides, bartending or being a waiter or whatever I was doing to make ends meet. So the early challenges are really about kind of taking that leap. And for the longest time after college, I spent a lot of time kind of hedging. I had my toe in the water as a full-time performer, but I was also still bartending at night or working a side job to try to pay bills. But one of the things I realized rather quickly was that it would never be the right time, and you would never have enough money, and you'd never have a perfect plan. And at some point you had to just take a leap. And I guess around 2007, 2 years after I had graduated college, I decided to finally take that leap and go all in, and to turn my back on all the other work that I was doing and just focus on being an entertainer. And I told myself that I would give myself 1 year to really just give it everything I had. And at the end of that year, if my career wasn't at a point where I could kind of sustain myself, then I would go back and kind of reevaluate. And honestly, within the first 2 months of taking that leap, my whole life changed in the sense that I think there's this magical thing that happens when you put all of your energy into one thing, a singular focus. And for the longest time, I was kind of like a jack of all trades, trying to start different businesses. I kind of have that entrepreneurial mindset, and it really, while that experience of all those other projects was helpful, it was that leap that defined and changed my career forever. And it would still be a very long road from then in 2007 to where I'm at now. But that was a huge turning point. So from there, 2007 to I'd say probably about 2017, the next 10 years, I built my career from, just sort of small local events to performing on, global stages for thousands of people, for huge corporations. But it was really that leap that kind of changed and defined everything for me.
Awesome. So when did you decide 2020 was the year to audition for AGT?
Well, 2020 has been quite a unique year. And that was part of the reason for doing AGT. I'd flirted with the idea in the past. It had never really been sort of the right timing for me. But at the start of 2020, I began a sort of major shift to launching a public career, trying to get my own show in Las Vegas. I moved to Las Vegas just over a year ago. And just as things started to get interesting, I started to have some interesting conversations. The pandemic hit, and the whole world shut down. And so, here I am as an entertainer. I've just moved to the entertainment capital, and all the stages just closed their door, not just to me, but to every entertainer. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we're talking, February, March, when things started to kind of progress and businesses started being closed, I kind of made a commitment to myself that from that moment forward, I was going to be open to whatever opportunity that life presented to me. And I was sitting at home watching America's Got Talent. The auditions were closed for the year. They were, doing the auditions in the traditional fashion with the audience. And then I noticed as the season progressed, like there was less people in the audience. And then there was no one in the audience. It was just the acts on stage and the judges. And then in the middle of the audition episodes, they just no longer could even meet up together in the same room, full on lockdown. And Terry Crews made an announcement that they were looking for a few more acts, that the auditions had been cut short and that you could audition virtually. And I thought, like, holy cow, like this is a moment. Like, this is such a special moment. Like, all the stages in the world are closed, yet here is the biggest stage in the world, America's Got Talent, and it's offering an opportunity to perform again. And so I jumped at the opportunity. I never in a million years thought that performance that I did in this seat, like literally I was seated right here in this room where I am right now, performing to my laptop, like this conversation we're having, for Simon Cowell and the rest of the gang. And I never in a million years thought that this thing I did in my living room would lead to me making a run almost all the way to the finals, into the live shows. It was just such a surreal kind of experience, being one of the only acts in the show's history to go from a webcam audition, to the semifinals. And from there, I didn't even expect to get a call back. It was just this thing I did that I thought would be interesting and fun. And then I got the call to come back for the judge cuts to do another performance over Zoom. So now we're in round 2, still performing remotely. And again, in that act, I managed to kind of wow Simon and the rest of the judges. That was a really special act too, because little did I know, as good as I am at predicting things, I never in a million years would have thought that the season would have continued without Simon Cowell. So like having that opportunity to perform for him before he left the show for the season was really special. And I didn't know that, ahead of time, but I really felt a genuine kind of deep connection to him that I missed as the season progressed. So to go from 2 Zoom auditions to being on stage in the live shows all the way to the semifinals at a time when the whole world was shut down. I mean, what more can you ask for in life and in business as a entertainer? I mean, what a wonderful, magical opportunity that I was given. And I'm so grateful that I got to go as far as I did and to show the world what I could do on such a big stage.
Awesome. Now, I remember every step of your journey.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you why. I remember when they announced the AGT at Home Edition, of all the acts that they showcased for us, the viewer, before they incorporated the show, I remember your audition so distinctly. And it was at home, and it moved me. It was one of the auditions that moved me from the webcam.
Thank you.
What was going through your mind when you heard those 4 yeses?
I just got chills right now when you said 4 yeses. I felt it all over again. It was overwhelming, but at the same time, at that moment, you don't know what that means. So the same way that maybe 100 acts heard yeses from the judges during the auditions, it's not guaranteed that just because you hear yes, that you will be moving on. Especially this season, which was so unusual in that, like, many of the acts completely skipped the judge cuts and just went straight to the quarterfinals. So it was at that time exciting. I was glad it went as well as it did. I was grateful to have had that opportunity. Originally, those online auditions only aired on the AGT YouTube channel. So my assumption was it was just online content. I never thought it would become part of the actual broadcast. And as you know, about a month after those auditions aired on their YouTube channel, some of the acts, maybe a half dozen of them, actually appeared in the NBC broadcast, which I didn't know was going to happen. And all of a sudden I was getting these tweets and these comments on Facebook and Instagram, people like, "Hey, I loved your act." And I'm like, what are they talking about? And it was like I turned on NBC and it was on right then. So that was surreal. I mean, every step of the way was surreal. Performing in the judge cuts, basically they gave a handful of acts that were kind of on the bubble an opportunity to perform again. And they said, we need to see more from you. And it made sense because I was one of the only acts this season that they actually hadn't seen in person. So I wasn't surprised when they said they needed to see more because they really only got to experience me through the lens. So the second round, the judge cuts, getting that invitation to come back, I saw as a huge opportunity, like for me, to really raise the bar. And I did what I think was one of my best performances of the whole competition, again on Simon. And again, that night, every step of the way, you have no idea what's going to happen, what's going through the judge's mind or what's going through America's mind. And I knew that I had done a great job in that performance. I knew that I had blown Simon away, but you wonder if that's enough. Sofia was very critical in my audition. She was kind of critical every step of the way, critical in the judge cuts. I didn't know if I was going to get to move on if I had the same impact on the other judges that I had on Simon. When he experiences something so impossible, how would the other judges feel? And at the same time, throughout the competition, I made the same choice to just focus on one judge at a time. A lot of acts perform for everyone. And I was like, I'm going to perform for one judge at a time and give them all a really special experience. And so it was Sofia in the auditions, and then Simon in the judge cuts, and then Howie in the quarterfinals, and then Heidi in the semifinals. It was going to be Terry Crews and all of America in the finals. But I thought that was a really fun way to approach it, to give each judge an experience, because you wonder, like, when you see this happen to Simon, you're like, well, okay, could he have done this on me? Like, could he read me that same way? So yeah, every step of the journey was an absolute thrill. I was so excited with how the performances went, but you still don't know if it's enough. The level of competition this year was so high, and you can hit it out of the park and you can get a standing ovation like we saw so many acts get this season, but at the same time, it still wasn't enough to move on because the competition was so intense this year. So yeah, really grateful to get 4 opportunities to perform in front of the whole world.
Awesome. I gotta say this: when you became one of my favorites when you did when you did the judge cuts, because I combined both the performances together. Like, for example, for Christina Ray, it was "Give Me Shelter," and then also "In the Air Tonight." For Alan Silva, it was just an audition I haven't seen in a long time, a solo acrobatic. That blew me away. But what really blew me away was your instant connection, and I gave you an standing ovation. And I want to make sure that when I was on Twitter, I think I was the AGT commentators that was always first to back you up.
I saw you all season. We had a few great Twitter exchanges, but I saw you all season being supportive, and it means the world to me, especially with the audience you have, that you kind of used your voice to support me throughout the show. I definitely saw it, and I appreciate it.
AGT is one of my all-time favorite shows that I'm a super fan of, and I've been watching it since its very first season. So I was a senior in high school when it first aired. So this show has so much meaning to me, and you have done a wonderful job. And I got to talk about the quarterfinals and the semifinals, because you had the biggest challenge out of anybody. You had to wrangle at least 500 people on Zoom. And for both the
this was a unique season, not just for me, but for all the variety acts, because especially if you're a talking act, you need an audience. I mean, this was a brutal season for comedians. It's like every comedian's worst nightmare. You show up to an open mic and there's like 3 people, right? Now we're lucky that those 3 people were 3 fantastic spectators. You can't ask for more than Howie and Heidi and Sofia for their personality and their level of engagement. So that was awesome. But at the same time, like, you as a live performer, as a non-musical act or a non-dancing act, you need an audience. Like, you need someone to feed off of, especially with what I do. Everything I do is based off of choices. And in a perfect world, I would have an audience of 500 people in a room. You'd throw a Frisbee, a random person would catch it, and then their choices, their input would become part of the act or become part of my prediction. And so that was the element of interaction and of participation and of randomness that was missing for me, which is a really key part of what I do. So I chose this season to kind of lean into that and to allow the at-home audience and the virtual audience to be part of my act, which was something no one's ever done before, because there's never been a season like this, but not just with AGT. In the world of mentalism in general, no one has ever performed for people through a camera lens. It's always done face-to-face. So I took a tremendous risk. It was a huge challenge. But I felt like if it worked, if I was able to pull these things off, the upside was just insane. And so I think the quarterfinals, to me, was my best performance of the entire competition. And it was because of the way I used the virtual audience. But that also presents challenges, because if you've ever been on a Zoom meeting or a conference call like we're on right now, anything can go wrong. You know, you can lose the audience. It can be hard to hear them at times. You can mishear what they say. So it was a tremendous challenge, but I kind of embraced it because this season, my goal wasn't to do things that I had done in the past on stage and just try to do them on stage for 3 judges that were there, because all of a sudden then it feels like you're doing what you're doing, which is performing on stage for an empty room. And so instead I said, I'm going to lean into what's going on in the world right now and the idea of virtual and a virtual audience. And I'm going to try to make that part of my act in a way that people haven't seen before. And I think it was a huge risk, and I'm glad I did it. And it allowed me to create some moments that I think we've never seen in the world of mentalism, and we'll probably never see again, because I'd assume there will never be another global pandemic where we're all stuck at home and forced to interact through a camera lens. So in many ways, I think it can make what I do more impossible, because if you and I were in the same room and I were able to tell you something impossible about yourself, that's one thing. But if we are hundreds or thousands of miles apart, to me, it becomes even more impossible. And while it's more challenging, I think it also made the act more interesting. So yeah, I tried to really lean into the state of the world and incorporate that both into my act and also into my message, because each performance I tried to have a really powerful message. You know, with Simon, it was about even though we're separate, how we can all feel connections to one another. In Howie's act, a very semilar theme, you know, with the drawings, but of how, you know, our thoughts and our energy can be connected even when we're apart. And then in the semifinals, it was really about luck and chance and taking the reins on your life and not leaving things up to chance and kind of making your own luck, as they say. And it was fun to be able to create all these amazing moments with the help of AGT. And I mean, they just make everything look so beautiful. And I'm really proud of the content that'll live out there forever now.
I totally agree. And that billboard and the suns were really incredible.
Thank you.
I got to give you
I
kudos.
think that billboard is still up. I got
Really?
some tweets. Yeah, I got some tweets from some folks at City Walk just last week, like right before the finals. I don't know if it's up now. I asked them if they could mail it to me, but it's really big, so probably not.
I think but hey, you could use that for your Vegas show, because I have a feeling that I think a lot of Vegas people who are watching the show will be contacting you.
Hey, you can only hope.
All righty, so
the dream.
Absolutely. So there's 2 more AGT related questions I got to talk to you about.
Uh-huh.
This was the 15th anniversary of AGT. So what does it mean to be a part of that legacy?
Well, for the last 15 years, this has been like, they keep raising the bar, right? And this year they were presented with the most insane obstacle, which is a global pandemic. And the fact that the AGT crew found a way to still make this show in spite of what was happening in the world and all of the challenges is incredible. But not only that, the fact that they were able to actually like innovate and raise the bar. I mean, some of the videos of the performances that we saw this year were stunning television. I mean, that virtual stage that they had with the XR and like 3D environments where the acts were like literally immersed in this magical land, you know, with a tree or an arcade like the one dancer had. I mean, it's really cool how they use technology to actually level the show up. And so instead of making something that was less than what they'd done in the past, they said, okay, not only are we going to meet these challenges, but we're going to exceed that. We're going to take it a step higher this year. And I think this actually was one of the most interesting and entertaining seasons of America's Got Talent in its history. I know it looked and felt different than some of the past ones, but I think that's actually what made it so interesting. And yeah, I mean, it's really great to be part of the legacy of America's Got Talent. You know, for the rest of my life, I can say that I was a semifinalist on this show, which is huge. And of course, you know, as a performer, the video clips and the new audience that I've gained and the experience and the amount of fun that I had. I mean, there's a million reasons I'm grateful for AGT, and this is a season unlike we've ever seen, and I'm sure that we'll never see another season like this again. So it's really special to be a part of. I mean, as the variety act, to perform and make it to the semifinals with no audience, I mean, that from a Zoom audition, I mean, that will forever be my story on America's Got Talent, and I think that's pretty cool.
Awesome. And I'm so happy for you about that.
Thank you.
And I got to say, have you thought about competing on Britain's Got Talent, or if America's Got Talent Champions comes back for a third season, would you be, if they contact you, would be interested in performing on the show? Why or why not?
So what was the first question when I go back on AGT?
Well, have you thought about either competing on
Yeah,
Britain's Got
I
Talent?
don't know if the door is open for a semifinalist, to have made such a deep run to go back from the audition phase. I don't know.
I'm Max. I'm so sorry to bother you. It's basically, would you compete on Britain's Got Talent or Asia's Got Talent or Australia's Got Talent?
The short answer is yes. So whether it is a sister show in another country, or whether it's returning as a guest act during a results show in the future, or competing, because I'm super competitive, competing in AGT the Champions, I would jump at the opportunity. Especially a year from now, when there's an audience in the theater, it would be amazing to have the opportunity to show them what I could do with a crowd, and leverage kind of my experience over the last 20 years, because that's what my experience is performing for a room with a crowd. And so this year was definitely a unique challenge, and I would relish the opportunity to come back and compete or perform on the show again as a guest. Absolutely.
Awesome, because I really want you back for Champion Season 3.
That would be awesome. If you know anybody, send them a letter. Let them know.
I'll do my best. All right, so let's talk social media. So what were your, besides Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, what other are those your 3 favorite social media platforms?
I mean, I'm active everywhere. I have a presence everywhere, I guess I should say. But I spend the most time and energy on Instagram and TikTok, and then a close second would be YouTube, and then probably Facebook sort of at the bottom of the list as far as the amount of time I put into it. And then Twitter is something that I don't sort of actively post to. I use it more as a means of conversation. So like I respond to every tweet that anyone sends me. I use that as a great way to communicate directly with my fans, but I'm not pumping out a ton of content there. I use it more for direct conversation, which is a great way if anyone wants to reach out and say hello or ask a question. Twitter's just a wonderful platform for direct communication. But most of my original content shows up on TikTok and Instagram first, and then longer form content ends up on YouTube as well. So, I mean, what I love about the internet is there's no gatekeeper. I mean, I don't have to go and pitch a show to someone to share it with the world. I can just create something and I can put it out there to keep you entertained while you're stuck at home or you're waiting in line for coffee or whatever it is. And so, so social media is just such an incredible opportunity for us to have in our lifetime as artists and performers to be able to share our work freely with the world. And so I'm so grateful that I live in this age and that I've been lucky enough to have such a great community built so quickly.
Awesome. So this is the second to last question. If you had the opportunity to meet with either fans or your colleagues who want to audition and compete on future editions of America's Got Talent, what advice would you share with them?
Be yourself, number one. I mean, you have to create things that are, this is probably advice for later rounds, but you have to, if you make it past the auditions, create things that are true to you. There's a lot of pressure on the show to go bigger and do things that are maybe outside of your expertise. And I'd say just really stay true to you, flex your creativity, kind of be yourself and show the world who you are. Don't be afraid to tell your story, that kind of thing. In the audition process, you have to get the judges' attention. I mean, they have seen so much in the last 15 years. If you're a singer or a dancer or a variety act, you have to show them something they haven't seen before. Another thing to keep in mind, throughout the show is how are you going to raise the bar and elevate yourself? But at the same time, this kind of counter advice to that is don't save anything for later. This is some advice that was given to me by some past contestants that I think was really valuable advice. It was don't save anything for the finals. Don't be this is the song I'll sing or this is the act I'll do when I get to the finals, because nothing's guaranteed. And so at every stage of the competition, you should do the best act you can possibly do, regardless of whether you'll get another opportunity to perform or not, because it's not guaranteed that you will. And for me, that created the challenge where each round I was well, how the hell am I going to top that? I just did the best thing I could do. But creatively, it forces you to work harder and think outside the box. So definitely don't save anything for later. Be yourself and show the judges in the auditions something they've never seen before.
Awesome. Now, where can my audience find you? On social media? What's your website?
Yeah, everywhere. If you just search for Max Major, I'm there. If you want to come and see me perform, you can just go to maxmajor.net. Right now, I'm doing virtual shows like 3 to 5 times a week. I've got 3 this weekend with 200 households will be attending per show. Really stoked to be able to share what I do through the lens. So if you're a skeptic, if you're someone who watched me on AGT and said, there's no way that everyone's not in on it, come to my show. You will be part of it. You will experience it for yourself. And tickets and all the info for those shows, which happen every weekend, are at maxmajor.net. And I hope people will say hello to me online. You don't have to buy tickets to anything. Just send me a message. I always reply to all my comments and tweets. And if you followed my journey on AGT, if you voted for me, I'm so grateful. Thank you for all the support.
Alrighty, guys. Now to watch or to download episodes of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, head to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker. This has been a big year for me because I've had a lot of AGT alums. I just sat down with Jonathan Goodwin, aka our mutual friend Jonathan Goodwin, the Daredevil. I sat down with Vicky Barbalak. I even sat down with Brandon Leak and Prince Poppycock, Anna Graceman, Drew Lynch. Even the Clairvoyance even came on the podcast and surprised me with tricks. So you can download all those episodes on go to Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker. Just type in Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB to that. And also connect with me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Jacob Elyachar, JACOB Elyachar. And now also, just guys, let you know, this is not my first time interviewing Max. This is my first time interviewing him solo because I actually interviewed him with the rest of the AGT semifinalists and on semifinals week. So you can read that interview with him and all the others on jakes-take.com. Once again, jakes-take.com. Max, thank you so much for taking time on your schedule to talk with me. I really appreciate it. I am so happy that you've had so much success, and I believe that AGT is just the beginning.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been great to meet you this season, and I hope we talk again.
Awesome. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you so much for watching and for listening.